You're listening to Romancing in Paris on Paris Underground Radio.
Hello, and welcome to the Romancing in Paris podcast. I'm your host, Lily Heise. In this podcast, we'll be traveling around the city as I pick out my top romantic spots per arrondissement. You don't have to visit these places only as a couple. Exploring them can be the expression of your own love of Paris. Are you ready to get romancing in Paris? Hello, and welcome back to Romancing in Paris. After enjoying some history and tips on romantic aspects and restaurants on and around the Rue Mouffetard in the last episode of the podcast on the 5th district, we're moving over to the 6th. When I was thinking about the most romantic spots in this central left bank district, I remembered back to the last episode on the 6th, in which we covered the terribly romantic restaurant La Perouse. Well, it's hard to beat its romantic attributes, but it's also a tad expensive, and I personally don't think that one needs to break the bank in order to have a special romantic meal. So this got me thinking, and steered in the direction of a different sort of format for this episode. Grab your chérie. We're going to dinner at the most romantic, historic restaurants across the 6th. When one thinks of the 6th arrondissement, historic cafes might rather come to mind instead of restaurants, like the Café de Flore or Les Deux Magots. While these are important to the heritage of the 6th, and Paris as a whole, they are more suited for a drink and people-watching rather than a meal. Most Parisians wouldn't necessarily consider the 6th as being among Paris's top gastronomic districts. Instead, they would think of the 8th for gastronomic restaurants or the 11th for innovative contemporary ones. However, focusing in on historic restaurants, the 6th has an above-average collection, on par with the 1st and 2nd arrondissements. In fact, I might dare to say that the 6th has the largest collection of historic romantic restaurants than any other district. So, instead of spreading these out into separate podcast episodes, I'm grouping them together into one. As I mentioned in the intro, La Perouse shines brightly as the overall most romantic historic restaurants in the 6th. And if you haven't listened to that episode, I suggest you do, as this late 18th century venue on the Quai des Grands Augustins has a tantalizing history and is among the oldest restaurants in all of Paris. So let's do a little tour around the other top historic romantic restaurants of the 6th, starting with the oldest, then moving forward in time. An even older restaurant than La Perouse is Le Procope. Paris's oldest café, today Le Procope is more of a restaurant. Originally opened in 1686, it was one of the first venues in the city which served coffee. It became a popular meeting point of left-bank philosophers, writers, and revolutionaries. Nods to its roster of illustrious regulars, from Rousseau to Robespierre and from Benjamin Franklin to Paul Verlaine, are scattered throughout its collection of dining rooms, which are decorated in the style of the different epochs the café has gone through over its 350 years of history. Although its food isn't as revolutionary as its former customers were, the menu offers well-prepared French classics such as soupe à l'oignon and boeuf filet of the revolutionaries. They've recently redone their back terrace, located on the charming Cour de Commerce Saint-André, which is a lovely setting for a date when the weather is nice. But an even more romantic place is the restaurant's few individual balconies found on the first floor on the front of the building on Rue de l'Ancienne Comédie. This is where I had one of my best dates ever, described in my first book, Je t'aime me neither. Moving forward in time, and geographically a few streets to the south, the next oldest restaurant is Le Polydor, a charming classic eatery which offers a number of draws. First opened in 1845 as a cheese store and restaurant, in the 20th century, its location in the heart of literary Paris made it popular with both French and foreign writers, such as Paul Valéry, André Gide, Ernest Hemingway, and James Joyce. Actually, this is how it was depicted in Woody Allen's 2011 movie Midnight in Paris. If you've seen it, you might recall a scene in which the fictional writer Gil Pender, played by Owen Wilson, meets Salvador Dali, impeccably played by Adrian Brody. It was shot at the restaurant, and this adds a nice anecdote to tell your chérie over your date here. What's more, its old-school ambiance of wooden tables and white and red checked tablecloths is perfectly Parisian. Plus, its reasonably priced menu provides a great option for romantics on a budget. Speaking of affordable options, you can spend even less money at the next eatery, Le Bouillon Chartier Montparnasse. Situated right in front of Montparnasse Station, this historic bouillon, a restaurant serving simple classic French dishes at very reasonable prices, was first opened in 1858. It was purchased by bouillon magnate Edouard Chartier in 1903, who had it redecorated, like some of his other establishments, in the popular style of the times, Art Nouveau. In my opinion, this is among the very most attractive Art Nouveau restaurants in the whole city. After passing through various hands over the course of the 20th century, the restaurant has returned under the Chartier umbrella, reopening as a bouillon in early 2019. Your chérie will ooh and ah as they enter the vast dining room decked out in Art Nouveau curvaceous mirrors, floral motif tiles, and gilded lights, all of which is covered by an eye-poppingly beautiful stained glass ceiling. Despite its glitz and glamour, you can eat a 3-course menu with wine for a mere 20 to 25 euros per person. Now, that's what we call a deal. A short distance away, close to the 6th border with the 7th, is Josephine Chez du Monet. Dating back to 1898, when it was simply called Josephine, the beautiful classic bistro is a lesser-known gem and another impressive time capsule. It was taken over by the Du Monet family a few decades ago, hence the modification to its name. The 3rd generation of Du Monets operates it today, although not much has changed over the last century. Much like the Polydor, it has a classic bistro feel, yet here more sophisticated. It has a yellow tin ceiling, dark wood paneling, geometric tiled floors, and antique mirrors. Classic dishes like boeuf bourguignon and coq au vin are delivered by professional waiters in their suits and white aprons. After your hearty main course, share a Grand Marnier soufflé while gazing into the eyes of your chérie. Pure magic. Thinking of moving to Paris or coming for an extended stay? Tune in to the brand new podcast on Paris Underground Radio, Broadening My Horizons, in which host Abby Rifle, a college student from the Midwest, comes to Paris for the first time and shares her impressions with listeners. Find it on parisundergroundradio.com. Romancing in Paris will be right back after a word from our sponsors.
And now, back to Romancing in Paris.
Of all the beautiful Art Nouveau restaurants in Paris, Le Vaginard is probably the least known, making it a nice surprise for perhaps a sweetheart who knows Paris decently well. You hardly notice it while walking along the bustling Boulevard Saint-Germain, the second of the Chartier brothers' impressive turn of the 20th century restaurant empire, the first being the Bouillon Chartier that many of you know, located off Les Grands Boulevards. However, unlike its predecessor, this one has a magnificent Art Nouveau decor. Previously a 19th century pastry shop, the Chartier brothers converted it into a fashionable eatery in 1904. It features stunning Art Nouveau frescoes, mirrors, curved wooden trim, and bronze coat racks. In the 1920s, the Chartier brothers sold it to the Vaginand family, whose name it retains. Fortunately, because it risked being turned into a supermarket in 1966, when it was saved by French Culture Minister André Malraux. He was also the savior of the historic buildings in the Marais, as we've discussed on previous episodes on that district. Beautifully restored, it has been a classified historic monument since 1983 and is ideal for a chicer date night, all the while remaining discreet. The last restaurant in today's collection is Le Bouillon Racine. Another inception of the Chartier brothers, this enchanting restaurant from 1906 is nestled on a quiet side street near the Luxembourg Gardens, very close to Le Polydor. While some of the others on this list feel more closed in due to their small windows, lots of dark wood, and low lighting, the Bouillon Racine has vast windows, tons of large mirrors, as well as tiles and frames painted in pale green, that is often featured in the Art Nouveau style, like in Hector Guimard's metro stations dating from the same era. The restaurant gradually declined over the first half of the 20th century, and from 1960 to the 1990s, it served as a cafeteria for the staff of the nearby Sorbonne University. Lucky professors. Thankfully, like the Vaginand, it too was saved, restored, and reopened. Its menu includes more modern French cuisine at fair prices. In addition to its beauty, it's also lesser known and could add more of a surprise factor for your date. There you have it, some fabulous options if you're looking for a unique date night or simply a special meal in the 6th District. Thank you for listening to this latest episode of Romancing in Paris. If you have a minute, ratings or reviews are always highly appreciated. You can find more great ideas for romantic things to do in Paris and beyond on my website jetammeneither.com, and check out the other great podcasts on the Paris Underground Radio site. Until next time, happy romancing in Paris.
This episode of Romancing in Paris was produced by Jennifer Garrity for Paris Underground Radio. For more on this show and shows like it, please visit parisundergroundradio.com.